What is up, down, and sideways, you beautiful individuals? It is another epi of League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you fine feathered individuals, and we've done it. We've finally gone downhill. We're steamrolling, full steam ahead. The offseason in full swing. We knew as soon as this free agency period was going to hit in the LCK, things would start going fast and furious. But I didn't have fast and furious reaching the level of the World Finals MVP from barely, not even 2 weeks ago, and the future face of T1 no longer returning as a 3-time champion.
Holy moly. I knew that coming off of the weekend, it was going to be the dominoes starting to fall and linking through all these different changes that we were going to see and waiting for that LCK free agency to start to really hit. And that's where the dominoes were going to increase in size. I didn't know they were going to become world size, the level of a world's final MVP, in the degree of Gumayusi saying that he will not be returning to T1, the organization that he has bled black and red for. He will no longer be on that team. This is going to be a titanic shift, not only for the LCK, but for the world, with Gumayusi moving on from this organization.
And obviously, based on how the year played out, obviously early on, and kind of Guma's statements and comments afterwards, very much feels like a Guma decision. I can only imagine he feels disrespected with how he was treated early on in the year with the whole smash benching scenario. You heard him reference it multiple times in Worlds teasers. That obviously rubbed him the wrong way, and I don't think T1 could have done anything to kind of fix those sour grapes that he was feeling.
Oh, it was a situation where, they've been dating all this time. You thought you were going to end up being married together for the long run, kids, a whole grandchildren. This was going to be the whole thing of T1 and Gumayusi. And then Guma finds out that T1 eats always with their mouth open. They never close it when they're eating dinner and lunch and everything else. And he just can't take another meal seeing that go on. That's how things played out this whole year. I think when you really look back on the whole smash situation, the statement about Gumayusi being out of form, but as the reasoning, things like that, you can go back to his sister making a comic, going over Gumayusi and that type of whole drama in that situation, saying that when he told his parents it felt like the earth stopped moving. It stood still at that moment, again, showing how much of a change, how much of a titanic moment that was. This whole drama that surrounded it. The year plays out the way it does. Guma performs the way it does. No question in my mind that if you are that individual, you are taking your talents elsewhere. You are exploring the opportunities, the vast ocean of which are all on your plate in comparison to staying loyal to this T1 organization.
And now, obviously, questions are going to be, well, where is Guma going to end up? I think Hanwha Life probably at the forefront of what most people are thinking. Reunited with Zeus, who is rumored to be re-signing or has already re-signed with the squad. And we're hearing Viper getting a big payday at the LPL, has said specifically, again, allegedly, he wants to play with Knight specifically. Whatever squad, if that's BLG running it back or JDG, he wants to play with Knight, which means a vacancy for Hanwha Life. And of course, the other one, replace Doc Dom on KT, but I feel like it's got to be one of those two moves for Guma going forward.
Those would be where I'd be guessing. And on a side note here, the Viper and Knight pairing up, that is a pretty lethal one that I think would scare a lot of people if that one comes through in the LPL.
If it's BLG, they got to fix the jungler situation for those two first and foremost.
There's definitely some other things you got to check on the grocery list if you're BLG for that one. But anyways, a Knight and Viper pairing would be incredibly lethal. But in the LCK, for Gumayusi and where you're looking, the landing spots, yes, are reuniting with Zeus on Hanwha Life, reestablish them as this new pillar that is, blooming in the LCK would certainly be an option. And the other one is KT Rolster. The question mark for me with KT, we've heard it for the last year and a half or so. The question has been about finance, about money. Can you pay up? And let me tell you, Guma ain't taking a discount. This is not a guy who's looking to, save you a little bit of cash for whatever. He's cashing out. on this type of move, and you better be bringing up the Brinks truck with all that cash and all those dollars loaded up for him. He's going to be ready for it. KT, are they ready for it is going to be my question, because yes, you're right. As far as the opportunities, potential landing spots, that certainly is one that I would circle if I'm Gumayusi.
If I'm Guma, I'm just showing up to any contract negotiations with that World Finals MVP trophy, saying, yeah, what's your offer there, cheap to come over? It does feel like Hanwha and reuniting with Zeus feels like the front runner for them, and because this is such big news, immediately afterwards we get number one, the signing that Doran will be coming back with the squad, and number two, T1's already got the replacement lined up for Guma, and it's not Smash, who was taken over that starting spot earlier in the year. They're locking up Peyz to replace the three-time world champion in Guma. And listen, Peyz is no slouch. Obviously had the incredible run to start his career on Gen G, and even on an underperforming, underwhelming JDG. We said this is kind of just a tryout year for Peyz to showcase what he's capable of, and landing a spot on T1 means the tryout year went pretty well for him.
This is about, I almost hesitate, but I'll go for it. I'll go for the 9 out of 10 on the replacement scale here for T1. This certainly was going to be a very tough dance to navigate, with some very attractive partners that you could have chosen and taken through. So still, the opportunities were there for T1, and they do strike in grabbing Peyz early in this situation, rumored to be so. He is certainly someone that, yes, this prove me type of year on a team that had a lot of struggles and a lot of issues, where Peyz wasn't that issue. He was really kind of the only positive thing. Certainly does help. So, and you're also going back on that Gen G pedigree that you have seen from him before in the LCK, to trust that, yes, not only with everybody else, but especially alongside Kyria in that bottom lane, you can cook up something special. You can get that damage. You can rely upon that type of contribution to a similar degree that you did get with Gumayusi. It's never going to be that one-to-one when you are talking about someone as phenomenal and as accomplished as Gumayusi has turned himself into.
And, I've seen a lot of people going, okay, well, Guma was kind of this weak side 80 carry. That's what made T1 so strong, is he didn't demand resources. But again, you're now running a year with Doran, weak side king on the top side. We've seen multiple years now Faker transition into that more supportive mid laner than completely 1v9 taking over until he needs to at Worlds, as is tradition. But you could see a T1 playstyle change completely, where they're playing around Peyz more and more often, because we've seen this dude is able to 1v9 on hyper carries.
Yeah, it does seem more so of a tailored shift, right? To cover your bases as far as what are your strengths as T1, and identifying that, yeah, you're renewing with Doran. You're maintaining that weak side king option up in the top side. Faker's finding ways to facilitate, to explode the rest of his teammates as well on a different level, and having Peyz be the guy that you are feeding it into certainly isn't a bad option. There's going to be questions, and I think I still have them for the management when you're looking at the choice to go to Peyz, right? Looking to say, you know what, we can't trust Smash to start out that year, to be that replacement, whatever, it's unfair, all whatever reasonings to not go with Smash led you to choose to go down and invest in Peyz. Where was that type of decision making and analysis when it became, when it was Smash and Guma at this point? And now that it's cost you Guma. So still absolutely going to be some questions and some hard thoughts for the management side of T1, but I don't think any of that should be, bleeding over into your analysis as far as what Peyz can bring to this team and what it means for T1 in 2026.
Yeah, I think everyone would say Peyz is the better option if you're choosing between them and Smash, but it really just does beg the question, why was Guma ever being subbed out earlier in the year, and you are now feeling the repercussions heading into 2026? It wasn't just the LCK. We had the LCS dropping some spice over the weekend. We got this new-looking Team Liquid lineup, and it's getting a little bit royal coming over, because we got a Lord coming over to the LCS. Lord Morgan coming in onto Team Liquid alongside Josedeodo to round out this roster with Quid, and then the returning bot lane of Yon and Core JJ. And Josedeodo and Inspired were both kind of mentioned for that Lyon Gaming roster spot, and we now know Inspired's going to be going there, and Josedeodo going to Team Liquid. And we're left here wondering, why didn't Inspired choose Team Liquid? Maybe that wasn't fully his decision to make, but it feels like the TL roster looks a whole lot better on paper.
Especially because the guy that he talked the most glowing about all year, frankly, I think in his whole career, he's not talked about a guy as glowingly as this. Quid is on Team Liquid. So yes, there's going to be some questions about that. Of course, can't return to the LCS without Josedeodo returning to the LCS. Of course, yeah, we had him in LTA. It's not the same. It's LCS, and Josedeodo is back on Team Liquid. There's absolutely going to be questions for this Team Liquid team. I think Morgan provides plenty as an import himself, going off of the history with Bro, but still also provides enough of a track record to say that this could work out in the LCS and could be one of these type of moves. So I'm cautiously optimistic about this Team Liquid experiment. I'm still got a question on how exactly we ended up with Josedeodo here and Inspired on Lyon when you see how everything's settled out. But still, I think I am hopeful for this Team Liquid team to resurge and rebound compared to where they found themselves this year.
Yeah, because regardless of what the supporting cast is looking like, Jan and Quid can be and have been the best in their role in the entire league. So you're looking at the most lethal dual carry threat that you'll probably have in the LCS. Yes, the questions are, how good can Morgan be? Because we've seen both sides of that coin his entire career in the LCK, and we've also seen Core JJ have a down year in 2025. So can he bounce back and beat any washed allegations that are coming his way?
Yeah, and that's certainly going to be where I think the importance for this Team Liquid team is, because you're not questioning Quid. You're not questioning Jan individually. You are going to have questions about whether Core JJ is the right option, the best available option to boost up Jan at this stage in his career, as well as looking at, I think, Morgan in that top side, the risk for him, because this was, again, a position where there was also a rumor potentially Impact would have returned as well to Team Liquid, would have been a very stable, less explosive option than Morgan provides. But I think the team, banking on and betting on getting some of that explosive performances from Morgan is one of those angles you got to consider looking at this team.
And when you do look at this Lyon roster on the other side, or Lyon Gaming, now looking like it's going to be fleshed out, Inspired, as we mentioned. Zamudo hopefully getting these visa issues. He was supposed to start last year, but Surti ended up coming in as kind of an emergency sub, but he's one of the more hyped up young NACL top laners and just players in general. And then Berserker and Isles riding out the bot lane. And obviously, if this was Berserker coming right over from Cloud9, I'd be feeling really good about this squad. But DN Freaks have one of the worst years in the history of the LCK. I'm feeling a little bit less hyped about this roster as a whole, and I'm worried about how Inspired might feel if his team is not the main contender in the LCS.
Yeah, that's certainly the attitude, the personal buy-in to the program and what you are doing is absolutely going to be one of those things that I think will fluctuate and have to be evaluated constantly with someone like Inspired if things start going sideways or don't go as planned for this Lyon Gaming group. As you mentioned, Zamudo in the top side absolutely is someone that I'm extremely excited about to get this opportunity. Should have had one last year, and I think can provide some of that firepower, some of those fireworks you want from a top laner. So I want to see him get that opportunity. And I think this is certainly going to be that big question when you're looking at this team is the bottom lane of Berserker and Isles. I think there's certainly people that will have their doubts about Berserker coming off the DN Freaks, and I think having to rebuild a lot of what he had already built up for himself on Cloud9 all those years. And then Isles himself still has a lot of doubters, a lot of questions when you're looking at him as in one of these starting positions. I think I've seen enough from him that I want to take this chance, but I need to see some good results early in order to feel solid about it.
And this is far and away the best roster Isles has been on. He's kind of been a standout at times on some weaker looking LCS squads. So we'll see if, with the kind of I'm not going to say star-studded, but a more veteran savvy lineup, see how he can perform. And Guys from Sheep Esports, by the way, also drop in that both Inspired and Busio, we reached out to G2 to kind of fill or join that squad, and G2 to both of them said, nope, we're running it back. We're still happy with Skumond and Lebrov. I understand giving Skumond another opportunity. He's really stood out, had a great year, and deserves another shot with G2, but you can take Busio for Lebrov, and I'm surprised they didn't at least entertain that idea.
Yeah, that's a pretty crazy little tidbit to come through at that point, hearing about both Inspired and Busio potentially going to G2, because again, that's a lineup of Broken Blade, Inspired, Caps, Hansama, Busio. That's pretty solid and kind of spells out best in the West to me right away when I'm thinking about a lineup like that. I think it maybe is an evaluation over the present and the future type of situation as far as maximizing you could have had in the present with an Inspired and Busio type of lineup, or thinking more so about the future and what you can build and you know, the longevity that you're looking at to continue to develop Skumon, Lebrov with this core group as the veterans in Caps and Broken Blade and Hansama. So I think G2 has doubled down on that in this situation, turning down Inspired and Busio.
And at the very least, this is a G2 coming feeling good about their Worlds performance. It's not like they floundered out in Swiss stage, lost matches they had no business losing. So there's definitely some momentum that they can at least carry with this squad heading into 2026. Other big roundups to get through as more LCK mid laners or LCK challenger scene mid laners are taken over. Zinie from KT Rolster. This is what makes me think there's no chance that there's a buyout coming for BDD, because they got rid of their biggest prospect in the challenger scene. This mid laner is a guy, I mean, he's won 2 MVPs of the Challenger League, been named the best mid in the league 3 different times. There were multiple teams. Cloud9 were interested in him. Squads in EU were inquiring about him. But somehow, one of the most highly touted prospects in that challenger system in Korea is ending up on the Shopify Rebellion? How did we get here?
I'm going to take the positivity angle. I'm going to go full rah-rah LCS. Shopify sold him on the experience of Los Angeles, the LCS returning. Maybe, who knows, maybe he watches a whole bunch of Ludwig and Moist Critical videos. Who knows what it is? The partnerships that led down this path. Zinie coming over to the LCS is a huge win for the region. This is one of the more so, probably to the highest end of degree of established prospects that could come over from the LCK. And yes, a guy that has had a lot of attention, a lot of desire from the LEC, the LPL, heck, even other LCK teams thinking about starting him. So getting this one, that ain't a cheap import for a squad like Shopify Rebellion, as you're saying. And so that's on both sides of it. One, good for the LCS and Shopify, and very hopeful for Zinie. But you're looking at KT, extra little bit of cash, making sure we're not selling out BDD. Maybe putting that towards the Gumayusi fund is certainly a possibility to keep our eyes open on.
Yeah, and it's just really wild, you know. Shopify, remember, they've been kind of these dark horses, have made some noise in playoffs, and it sounds like the core Fudge contracts, B-Boy and Seos, probably returning. And listen, if you now have B-Boy and Zinie together, that you might slide that right behind what you're getting out of Team Liquid as best mid bot lane duo carry threat in the league.
It's going to be one of those ones where it has to be proven, right? You will need to be proven right about a lot of these expectations or suggestions or hopes about the squad. But still, the fact that you can, before we see the games, put them into that type of category, say that I am looking out for these type of things for them, is a big improvement for a squad like Shopify Rebellion, and it brings them back more so in towards that relevancy when you are talking about the region, when you are bringing up the conversation about the LCS coming back. Having an opportunity, having an exciting player on your lineup that can be such a game breaker like Zinie is going to be a big get for Shopify Rebellion.
And we'll again put them right in that maybe contender status in the LCS. They're sweep, like every team is making a big change, whether they wanted to or not, in the LCS coming into this. And one of the ones, you know, the defending champs, FlyQuest, it's blowing up. We know Quad and Masu are returning, but the rest of it, absolutely blown up. Still a question mark in what support is going to be starting for them, but now we're seeing that it's likely going to be Gakos getting that starting top lane position, which I think we kind of expected. They were obviously gearing and training him towards that, and now a little bit of domestic young talent hype here, and that Gryffinn likely to be the starting jungler for them, who just had a top 4 finish in his tier 1 debut with Loud in the LTA South. And this is a guy that we've been hearing about for a long time. He hit Challenger and near rank 1 when he was like 13 or 14 years old. But again, domestic NA talent, we love to see them getting an opportunity.
Very, very much so looking forward to seeing that opportunity for Gryffinn. This is certainly, yeah, I can't really even recall someone that you've heard as much about through the weeds, through all sorts of sources in North America about an upcoming talent like this. So yes, very much so looking forward to seeing this opportunity. And again, it's one of those ones where FlyQuest needs to reestablish, rebuild themselves up here in the LCS, in their standing and everything else. And that opens the door at the very top of the region. And that's why I think you're seeing a lot of these changes on combined with what the free agent market was and how things had played out. But the shift back to the LCS, gaining another spot at these international tournaments, and having that open up with FlyQuest going under so many changes and falling down, it's going to be a wide open race in the LCS heading into this next year. And I can't wait to see everyone brawl and fight it out.
And even though Gryffinn, young player, not even 20 years old, remember, he spent some time on that T1 rookies team, so he's got that world champion blood in him, even if obviously he wasn't a main starter for T1, but was around that organization, and there's lots to glean off of any of the players associated with T1 to bring over to the LCS. So FlyQuest absolutely could be a dark horse in here, but one thing, with the LCS and LEC making all these moves, our power rankings are going to go hard heading into this preseason because there's so many question marks around so many different teams. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you. Absolute beauties. Thanks for hanging out, and we will catch you on that flipping.